Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Didn't Turn Out Okay. I'm here today with Alexa Mufson. She's the founder and CEO of Leigh, and she now has both platforms, both Alexa Mufson, where she talks a little bit more personally, and Leigh, where she shares all her amazing jewels. But before we dive in, Alexa, can you introduce yourself as an entrepreneur and as a mom?
I am Alexa Mufson. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, 9, 6, and 4 in, like, a week, which I'm struggling emotionally with. And I'm also the CEO and founder, whatever, designer of Leigh Jewelry, um, which is predominantly, a jewelry line, but every once in a while we get crazy and throw in some sweaters, sweatshirts, scrunchies, or whatever else strikes us in the moment.
Yes, which is important to note. I get really excited about those things or some of your like collabs and partnerships. And you do such a great job of teasing it. Like, you
Oh,
just did this
thanks.
mood board yesterday, and it made it memorable. I immediately asked you when we came on, like, "What did you just launch?" Because I missed the launch in the chaos of this morning, but I knew it was something that I wanted to make note of because I loved the mood board. But anyway, it did so well that Alexa sold out. Do you want to just show them the bracelet?
Yeah, well, you can't get it anymore, but cool now.
And if you're listening, it's a cord. Some
Yes,
people will be watching on YouTube. It's a cord with a charm.
we were very pleasantly surprised, but that's never happened to us before. It sold out in, like, the first hour, so we are,
It's amazing.
yeah, very
What
excited.
a good feeling.
Yeah.
I just recently saw, Set Active, the owner, Lindsay Carter.
Oh,
She
I
just
saw
did you
that.
see this? Yeah, and just, like, owning our wins. So, anyway, for listeners, Lindsay Carter shared how maybe it was the first hour they made over
Did
a
1,000,000 in an
million.
hour, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was like, "I hesitated posting this because for obvious reasons, it might seem braggy or whatever it is, but I think it's, like, more about celebrating our wins and when we're proud, and I think that even, like, goes for our kids too, which we can get into, but just, like, why should we feel, like, ashamed or sheepish about sharing that?
Yeah, so
Um,
true.
and to celebrate that.
You're so right. I feel I don't do a great job of that, and I try to remind myself every year or every win to, like, take a moment to celebrate the win. We were just kind of raised in a not it's like, "Okay, so what's next?" Right?
Totally.
But it is so important to pause.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I'm reminded because it's a bracelet that you launched of our partnership that we
Yeah.
did, which I feel like is a good place to dive in. So Alexa and I collaborated on these bracelets to help with separation that came with a little poem to help, when kids are starting school, but can be used for anything. And it's sort of this tangible thing that you and your child can wear. Well, it is a tangible thing, but it's a tangible symbol for children to still feel connected to us, that even when we're apart, we're still connected. And they were jewel hearts. Seems like a lifetime ago. I think it was like during the first year back after COVID that we had it, but we often are like, we should do that again.
I know, okay, we're
Um,
gonna bring it back for back to school.
I would love to do that.
We got to
Yeah,
do it.
I
I think
think.
we need that. I want something too that the boys can wear. Not that they couldn't have,
Oh, yes.
but
Maybe the cord thing. I don't know
yeah,
what.
we could definitely okay. We could start use into a business meeting. Everyone could just look and the else we collaborate on the process.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the boyfriend voice. Okay.
But I wanted to use that as just a thing to share, but also to share about how we relate a little bit in different ways when we see anxiety in our kids. And if you're comfortable, we can start there. Just if you see that in all of your kids, some more than others. You have 3 kids, as you mentioned. So I'm just curious, yeah, what the differences in that area.
Yeah. i- i- it's super interesting, I think, as you have multiple children to see the personality differences and how you potentially have to parent them differently. Not that I'm an entirely different mother by any means. I am who I am, but just like certain subjects require more sensitivity in each one. My middle one is definitely more of a worrier than the other 2. I can't totally tell with my 3rd yet, but certainly more than his older brother who's like, "Whatever, it's all good, like, it'll all be fine." More of that type of attitude. I mean, they all have their worries and their struggles, but my middle one tends to, um, like, kind of picture the worst case scenario. I'm gonna give an example. So, he wasn't feeling well, and I was like, "You don't I think maybe you won't go to football practice tomorrow. If you're not feeling well, I'll pick you up early. You won't go to your practice." And he was like, "Well, what if the coach sees me at school and, wants to know why I'm not going to practice?" And I said, "Well, then you would explain to them I'm not feeling well." He was like, "Well, what if you're late picking me up?" I was just all the like what ifs, right? Like, well, then what if you're late? Or what if my friend then sees me and wants to know? And then what if I have to go to practice, but I'm not feeling well? And he's just kind of like a little spiraling, right? And it's so hard because I was thinking about this before we came on. Like, all we want, I think, is to take away their worries, right? But that's not realistic for life. And
Yeah,
so I can't just say to him, "Don't worry."
right.
That's
Or
actually
like,
not really
I'll handle
setting him
it
up,
or
right? Like, that's not
yeah.
setting him up. First of all, that doesn't work. When somebody says, tells you,
Right?
"Don't worry," you're like, "Okay, wish I thought of that," Like,
Yeah,
that's not it.
and
So,
yeah,
helping them, cope is just so tricky. Um,
yeah. I always, like, think about and remind myself in those moments. I have my younger Nell is similar with sort of the spiraling. I think she's younger. She's just turned 5, but has been this way for a while, and so when she was super young and I would see it, it would just be repeating the same question, but you could see how that could manifest to, like, later asking just multiple questions, as they can more articulate all the things that could happen or that they're spiraling about. And it's like very real time, like, wow, my child has a lot going on in their head right now.
right. Yeah.
And I think 2 things. One, what you said that like our reflex is to just fix it. And I think what that comes from is that it's triggering for us, right? Like we picture when we have anxiety and spiral that it's such an uneasy feeling for us that to imagine our child feeling it just feels like too much to bear. And so it's really like, which is the second point, it's really about us being able to tolerate that. Like it's hard enough to tolerate our own, but to be able to like tolerate our child's. Because the worst is when we respond like, kind of letting that trigger take over, like just don't worry, like, or, just with a little bit of like sort of like unnerving behind it, because then it can just add to what they're feeling.
Yep.
So how have you handle, like, is for an example with that.
I tried to let him in that situation, I tried to let him play out the scenario of like, okay, so what if you're okay, you're right. Like, what if I'm late picking you up? Like, what do you think can
Right.
happen? You know? And I think ultimately it's never as bad as if you kind of let them go there, I mean, for some things at least. Um, I was like, you know, yeah, maybe you could just tell the coach, like, I know my mom's coming, or I wasn't feeling well, you could advocate for yourself. I just sort of let him like play out, okay, yeah, and what if the coach said, no, too bad, like,
Right.
because he was like, what happens then, Um, I let him go there. I don't know if it helped, but it was what the alternative didn't make sense either, I think, to just say, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry, don't worry.
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
really not it. That's not super comforting. Um, so
And it
I
might
try
not.
to let them dive
Yeah.
in a little, you know?
Yeah. I was going to say, um, that that's something that for listeners, this is Alexa and my second time recording this. Because we didn't wait long enough in the last episode, but I remember telling you to try, like, maybe going to worst case scenario with a child that's old enough, that sometimes it's hard to know for a child to really, like, pull apart what the fear is. They are just so overcome with, like, fear or worry that and us too, right? Like, we might be, like, going to a social situation as an example, and we just have anxiety. And so when we don't kind of go to worst case scenario, the anxiety just sits and permeates.
Yeah.
And when we help, when a child's old enough and we can say, "So what if that happens?" It sort of, like, opens up this conversation that we hope they can have with themselves. So using that as an example, like, yeah, what if the coach sees you? Right? Like, that helps train them to sort of break apart the anxiety, so when you're like, "I don't know if it works," I think the goal, at least when I was like, "Maybe try this," is that eventually it becomes a tool for
Right.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Um,
I mean,
yeah,
like, you want them to realize that they can handle anything, right?
yeah, and tolerate
Even the
that
worst
and
case scenario or
yeah.
whatever, that they'll get through it.
Um, do you feel that you have get anxiety, or do you think you know where it might not
Yeah,
that it comes from, I think we
yeah,
all get a level.
I used to get really bad anxiety, and then ultimately I feel like I was just kind of constantly put in pretty not constantly, I shouldn't say that. I still went through these, situations where that were anxiety provoking, right? To the point that, like, maybe it, like, raised your tolerance a little bit, right? So,
Like,
where
in
some
childhood or,
yeah,
like
as a child. Now, just having the terminology, like, I don't remember my parents, sorry, mom and dad, um ever saying what you're feeling is anxious or what you're feeling is anxiety.
right.
So I even think just having that label, like to me, when I would get anxious, I would feel like I was going to throw up and
Right.
sick to my stomach, right? But I didn't know what I was experiencing. I just felt like sick, like I'm going to really bring it way back. I used to get a little sick when I had to go for sleepovers, and I wouldn't make it through the sleepover. I would call my mom to come pick me up. What I told her was like, "I'm not feeling well." That was like my truth. I really wasn't feeling well. Had somebody maybe said to me, "You know what? You're just feeling anxious. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. Sleeping at a friend's house that you've never slept at their house before, you're feeling uncomfortable. It makes sense that you're feeling uncomfortable." Like, giving me a little more, context. So I try to do that for my kids too. Like, my son was his stomach was hurting before I was traveling at one time, and his stomach might have actually been hurting, or he was feeling anxious and about us traveling and just didn't really know how to communicate that besides saying, "I don't feel well." Um, I don't like to tell them how they're feeling, but I do like to offer up, labels so that they can later on say like, "Oh, yeah, I was angry, or I was sad, or I was anxious in that situation."
Yeah, and I think people often hear, emotional intelligence, and are like, "What does that even mean?" Or, on the surface, it's like, "Why is that important? Like, what does that mean and do for kids?" And I think you're describing that right here, right? Like, had you had some sort of, like, language or intelligence around what you were feeling, not only could it have helped change some of the experiences, but it allows you I always talk about, like, a child can't learn if they're anxious, in the throes of emotion, angry, frustrated, like, no learning can happen then, right? That's not when you're, like, trying to work through stuff. And so I think similarly, like, when a child's in a classroom, I'm not saying that was you, there's no learning to be had unless you have this ability to access tools. And that comes with being like recognizing and having this level of emotional intelligence. Like, I realize now that I'm anxious, what are some tools that I can use, or what has mommy told me that means besides just like frozen in, I don't feel good. Conversations can help you not label for them, um, and help them again in these moments to have these conversations with myself. Like, I recognize this feeling in my body. I had it when I had my last sleepover. I'm using you as the example now. And my mom reminded me that that might be like what I feel when I'm in a new place, or I know I'm not going to be in my own bed. And these are some things she told me that I can ask myself, or some breathe, like all of that. It just sort of like sets that whole stage.
Yeah,
But that's my little like spiel to say that I think it's really great how it's being approached. And it's such an important example to kind of like think back to your own self and how it might have benefited you, right?
I do this thing, at bedtime. I started with my older one, then my middle one, like, found out that we do it, and so he wanted to do it too. So when I tuck them in at night, we say 3 feelings that we're feeling. My older one loved it, and he's a boy, and I'm like, "The last thing you wanna do at whatever, the end of the day when you're tucking them in is, like, listen now to them go on about their feeling." You're just like, "Can we wrap?"
Right, you're like, "I'm so ready, and now I'm opening it up."
Yeah.
Right.
But my 9-year-old, without fail, every night will be like, "Okay, can we do feelings?" So I'm like, "Of course we can. It's my favorite." He says 3 feelings, and with some context around them, like, if he says angry, I'll say why. Or he'll say, "I'm angry because." Um, he's pretty happy, guys. He's, like, rarely angry, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I have to say my 3 feelings, and I'm honest. Like, sometimes it's like I am frustrated or I'm anxious for tomorrow because I have a podcast. I feel like it will serve all of us very well, them specifically in a feeling like they can communicate those feelings to me. I mean, I feel I'm doing it now, laying the foundation for
Yes.
later when the feelings become bigger and much more complicated and harder to express. My mom tucked me in again. Sorry, mom, I love you. She tucked me in at night, but I laid there and worried about things about the next day. And like, I wish I had the language or chance to say,
Right,
you
or
know,
an outlet, or someone like or even like a what's the word? Like a soundboard, or like landing place, right? Like, it's not like you necessarily wanted maybe someone to like talk you out of it or whatever, you just needed to like put it somewhere.
it's newer for my middle one. He's gonna be 7, but he's 6, and he found out that I did it with Sai, my older one, and liked the idea. He's newer to it, maybe in the last not if Sai's been doing it for years, Dean's probably been doing it for the last year. So,
That's so great.
he's newer to it. He likes me to go first a lot of the time, um,
Yeah.
which is fine. I think he's, like,
Well, that's part of what
feeling
I
me
love
out.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to show you could like I said, you can feel 2 things at the same time. I can be super grateful or whatever about something and also, nervous about something.
Right. You probably came up with this tool of like feelings because you remember going to sleep without having that. I
Probably, yeah.
think if you were
Probably on subconscious level, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the magic of what I want people to share, of course, when they're comfortable. But can you think of, I know I'm probably springing this on you, any other areas of motherhood where you've like dug into like your childhood self and how it's helped you?
Oh my god, such a big question, I'm sure.
You had experienced postpartum that was kind of unique.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, if you could share that.
Yeah, so each one was different, which, like, if you're listening and you're pregnant or have had one or having another or wherever you're at in the process, I think it's important to know that it can be different. But I didn't even realize that I wasn't myself until I was pregnant with my second with Dean. And my mom mentioned, like, hey, maybe you want to talk to your doctor about like meds or postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety with 'cause you're gonna give birth soon." And I was like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, you were pretty dark, um, with Psy." And I was like, "What?" Like, it was honestly news to me. I called a friend right after being like, "Was that weird?" And she was like, "Well, you weren't yourself." And I kind of really thought that that was just motherhood. Like, you're not sleeping. My life, your life gets just really rocked and you're forever changed. And I didn't think that I didn't think I was depressed. I didn't want to harm myself, my child. Um, but I certainly wasn't myself and um really wanted to take care of the baby myself, wanted to be there for every diaper change, every everything.
So
Um
some level of, like, anxiety or control that which
Control
is sort of
maybe,
anxiety.
yeah. I really wanted to do it myself because I wanted it done a certain way. And also, I think an element of that was which I found out much later, was that I had DMER, which is a physiological response when your milk when the letdown happens before you breastfeed. Some people's I mean, I should really have done my research and had the proper terminology, but, um some people's hormones just, like, drop like this in order for the milk to come down, and if you have DMER, it goes swoosh, and it's, like, really quick, and it's really low, and it's not psychological, it's physiological, so it actually you can't control it. Um, what you're feeling is real, and so every time I breastfed, which was, at the beginning, every 2 hours, maybe less, um, you're feeling these really big drops in that's when I would feel anxious. I would all of a sudden have these overcoming feelings of unease, intrusive thoughts, like, um, yeah, it was just it's certainly not feelings of elation and joy, the opposite of that. And I didn't know that that's what I was experiencing, and it wasn't until I realized later on in my process with babies, but it was really helpful to have at least a label. Again, going back to like being able to off the terminology for anxiety, um, to be able to say like, okay, I see you, I feel you,
Mhm.
see what's happening here. I have to wait a few minutes until this passes because that's kind of what happened. But I'm not crazy. I'm not like,
When you could kind of mentally prepare for that before, when it would come close to time to breastfeed and stuff, did that also help? Like, you'd be like, "All right, like, I'm bracing myself," type of thing. Was it
definitely,
sort of
definitely. Yeah, knowing that it was coming was super helpful. I had not seen that many people talking about it, and it might just be because they don't know that they have it. When I spoke about it previously, this was like a few years ago, I mentioned it, I think, on social media, and somebody wrote me and was like, "Thank you." Like, I have this, and they've been thinking there's something wrong with me. Like, I feel sick every single time I go to feed my child, but I'm really dedicated to breastfeeding. Like, what's wrong with me? And now, I don't wish more people had it. I just wish more people told me
right,
about it.
talked about it?
Yeah.
It's, like, similar to what we were saying, and this is, like, a universal thing that, like, when, you're feeling a certain negative emotion, you feel like what's on top of that, and especially for kids, right? Like, when you're lying awake alone, at bedtime, you feel really alone and lonely unless, like, you have knowledge or, like, someone you could have a conversation with that's not how much worse would it feel if when you were feeling that, your mom or husband or her friend or, when you're like, "I'm feeling this feeling," would be like, "Don't worry, like, you're
Yeah.
being crazy."
Right.
It makes you feel more alone, right? But
Totally.
the fact that I'm not suggesting any of them did that, but it's our reflex with kids, not to call them crazy, but to be like, "There's nothing to worry about. You'll see
Yeah.
the coach. It's no big deal." And it actually makes you feel less connected to, like, your parent when they're, like, telling you that it's not a feeling you should feel. Anyway, like, just another testament to, like, knowledge is power around emotions,
Totally.
and especially for you in this area. I wonder, just kind of looping back to sort of the spouse thing, the first time around, did you ever like voice when it would happen, or you sort of were just like, this will pat, like had your own coping mechanism that sort of probably obviously manifested into like Alexa's not herself, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't mean that facetiously, but
no,
yeah.
really sadly, I don't think I did. Which makes me sad for me. Um, I think I just thought it was normal. Honestly, I think I thought that you're tired, you're, like, really not thinking super clear. I gave birth in the winter. It was always dark. I felt like every time I was feeding Di, it was dark.
Can you share your recent sort of like transition on this note that, yeah, like you were sharing kind of openly personally on Alexa Lee. And so what have you recently done?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thoughts around it.
Yeah, so I've been managing the well, now you're right, it has been around because I've been well,
I know it's hard to like remember.
yeah, but I have been running my social it since it started. Um, and never wanted to give up the reins of thought. Like I responded to every comment, I did every post. And for a while that was for forever. That's been great. But felt like the lines were getting really blurred with like what was personal and what was brand. And ultimately, I want Alexa Lee to be able to exist without me, like the person. Um, I'll obviously I'm not going anywhere. I'm part of it, but
Yeah.
it would be, "Hey, we're launching these new beautiful earrings," and then like, "Hey, this is my pizza dinner, and also whose kids have eczema and molluscum like mine do," you know? And
Yeah.
it got very blurry. The lines got very blurred. So I'm gonna have a personal profile where I can share brand related things and personal things. And Alexa Lee will still exist with all of the brand focus. Um, no pizza dinners, no molescum talk, none of not without that stuff, which I think makes sense now. We've grown
Yeah.
up, It used to just
Yes.
be me, myself, and I, and now there is a team behind it, and it needs to have its own world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it's its own living, breathing thing.
yeah.
And I think like on that note, it's like helpful for people to know where they could find you, but also such a nice thing to hear that, like, yes, you did it because you've grown, with your business, but also it sounds like you've grown on a deeper level, like, in delegating, which I
Yo,
I
good.
know I don't speak for myself, is, like, a really hard thing as a small business or, like, as an entrepreneur, let's say. And so, before we have to go, I wanna learn from you in terms of, like, were there moments that made you think, besides when you were talking about eczema and things like that, like, "I can delegate some of this."
I'm a recovering perfectionist, but it still sneaks up every once in a while. And yeah, I needed it to look a certain way and everything to be a certain way. And I thought the only way for that to happen was for me to have like full control over it. And the truth is, nobody is paying as close as attention as you are. And nobody cares as much as you do in the best kind of way. Like, if the
Yes.
picture is imperfect, or if the caption isn't perfect, or if the grid doesn't look perfect, I know a lot of people have let go of the grid looking a certain kind of way. I really like needed it to be aesthetically pleasing. Nobody cares as much as I do, and like so it's so act like me to like not let it go and let it go and who cares?
Right.
Just it doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah, I love you just reminded me of this that I wanna, like, use. It's not about letting it go, it's about just letting go. Like, let it go feels negative, like, "Oh, like,
So
just
true.
go to shit,"
Yeah,
right? And letting go is, like, not holding on as tight.
exactly. Thank you. You said it much more
Well,
eloquently
thank
than
you for, like
that is what I'm trying to do in life, you know? Yeah.
yes, absolutely, and there are moments like, what you're saying is so true, so I wanna just, like, validate that nobody's looking as closely, but there are moments when I'll say that to myself, like, "Nobody's looking as closely," and then I'm like, "But maybe they are with this," and I have a hard time, and I think that's, like, such a good shift to make, like, maybe they are, but I'm not letting it completely go. I'm just letting go, and so if they notice that one emoji, like, whatever, I do run mine, but I've let go of, like, the Union Square Play one and all that, like, that's okay, and I think serves us so much better in so many all other areas, and being a recovering perfectionist, I don't know about you, but it really motivates me to be that way for my kids, which I don't know if you've seen it in your kids, but we could have a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
But just I wanna keep you going with holding on to that recovery process,
Thank
so I
you.
wanted to just add that in there.
What from one recovery was patient? What do we call ourselves? Are we
Yeah, recovering yeah, patient, I guess. I don't know, because it is sort of an addiction, so maybe a recovering perfectionist addict, yeah, to another.
yeah. Okay. I see you. I'm
I
here
see
for
you
you.
too. And just remind everyone, I know you shared the Instagram handles, but maybe website where they can see your jewels and where
Yeah.
they can find you.
So Alexa Leigh, Leigh for all your jewelry essentials and jewelry things, and sometimes other things. And Alexa Mufson for if you want to get personal. Let's see how personal I get, but you want to
Yeah.
get a little more personal.
Yeah.
Mufson. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening today.